right. Hello, HBARians, Hedera community. It's nice to be back with everyone. We will wait and give folks just a couple of minutes to join before we kick off our quarterly town hall here.
It is good to be here with you. Hello, future from England. Good to have you joining us. And from Spain, very cool. I have visited both of those, and Italy. All three of those are great places that I have visited. Charleston, South Carolina, I have not visited, but hello. Uh-oh, one guy can't hear anything. Hopefully you guys can hear us. Nashville, Tennessee. Atlanta, Germany. Hello, Germany. Deutschland. Watford. That sounds English. I don't know where Watford is. Spain? Oh, audio is fine. Good. West of Ireland, welcome. Canada, Ottawa, Canada. I think there was another Canada too. We have a spare room. Great. Well, we'll come visit you. Looking forward to this one from Philly. Philadelphia.
Mike T from College Station.
We used to live there. India, welcome. South Africa, great to have you. Another one from Deutschland. I have only spent one day in Germany. I was passing through somewhere. I would love to go spend time in Germany. I think that would be a lot of fun. Plano, Texas. I've heard of that place. York, Maine. That's cool. Huntsville, Texas. Oh, interesting. I know about another Huntsville. I didn't know about Huntsville, Texas. You guys are from all over the place. Denmark. Welcome. Algeria, very cool. Turkey, wonderful. From the past and hello, future. I love it. Belgium, Latvia, the Netherlands. I love it. Hollanda, okay. London, hey, I really enjoy London. Darraville, Canada. Oh, my favorite city in Canada. Detroit, Michigan. Cool. Puerto Rico. I know people in Puerto Rico. I visited there before. Beautiful place. Edinburgh.
If I remember correctly, I think you went to Puerto Rico right after we launched Hedera.
It may have been. My trips are a blur.
I went to Asia. He went to Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
It was right after something, though. I had some other meeting, I think, and then went to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I went to Edinburgh once and visited the castle there, but I think it's pronounced Edinburgh. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but I think it's how it's pronounced. Cool place. Baird is a Scottish name. I don't know much about Scotland, but it was fun to visit it. In fact, I visited Lanarkshire, which supposedly is where Baird came from in like the 1200s or something. Very cool. Switzerland. Hello. España. Hola.
I saw Cambridge as well. I did a summer there. Beautiful place to study if you can get attention long enough.
Very cool. I spent some time in the other Cambridge, the one in Massachusetts. Indonesia. Hello. Welcome. An exotic Connecticut. That is exotic.
All right. Oh, I think we still have folks coming on. But I know we have a full schedule today and we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So thank you for joining us. For those who are new to the town halls, welcome. We try to address questions that we have not addressed in the past. So we get a ton of questions beforehand. We try to, make sure that we're not repeating things that can be found on the website or have been answered in previous town halls. So if you don't get your question answered today, I would encourage you to look on the website. If it's not there, please, we try to get through as many as possible, but feel free to submit for next time. I do also want to introduce Brett McDowell to the community here. I know a lot of you know him. Brett is the chair of the Hedera Governing Council and Board of Directors. And as we continue our path to decentralization, as we continue to spin out into Swirlds, you are going to see Brett and the rest of the Hedera Governing Council members take a much more active voice in the community. And we are really excited about this. So Brett definitely has some things that he can share today about what's happening there, but you will look to see much more of Brett going forward. So
thank you, Zenobia.
Yeah, it's really good to have you with us today. I really appreciate being here with you.
Thank you.
And Brett, I might just put you on the spot for a minute. I know we haven't talked about this, but do you want to just give your background for just a minute? I think it would be great for the community to hear. I know they have heard the three of us ad nauseum.
Sure, thanks, Zenobia. So my background, and I think what probably caught Mance and Leemon's eye when they brought me into this project at the beginning of 2019, is that I've been building and leading, facilitating, coordinating industry associations for over 20 years now, from different sides of the table, sometimes as part of management, executive director type role, building an organization, sometimes as a member. So most recently, I was the founding executive director of an organization called the FIDO Alliance, which set standards for cryptographic strong authentication. Before that, founding chairman of the DMARC working group, which was set cybersecurity standards that allowed people to protect their email sending domain. Before that, Kantara Initiative and the Liberty Alliance, which were identity federation standards projects. So most web single sign-on, at least in enterprise, happens over SAML 2. And that's where, Mance and I also had some commonality when he worked in the identity federation at Ping. And along the way, I did a short tenure, about 4.5 years, in the Office of Information Security at PayPal, where I was the head of ecosystem security, looking after cybersecurity standards and public policy.
All right, thanks, Brett. And for those of us who have been at Hedera, Brett has been working tirelessly behind the scenes and engaged with council members over the last few years. So we are excited to have him more visible. I'm actually going to start with a question for Mance and Brett, given that introduction. I think a lot of people are wondering, how will it work with Swirlds having Mance and Leemon, and with that shift with Mance and Leemon therefore not being at Hedera?
Okay, well, so we'll tag team this. I think I'll just start by just sort of restating the why of what we're doing. And then Brett will state the how, if we can sort of take it that way. As you all know, we started the project back in 2017, and it was a small group of folks just that created Hedera, the platform. It was doing software development. We started recruiting council members. We very quickly were able to decentralize governance. And in fact, the first 5 members of the governing body were named and formally became members of Hedera in February of 2019. And it's just, the council's just continued to grow. Since then, we're at 26 today. And, a very mature, or far more mature governing council today, obviously, than back then. But governance was decentralized from the earliest parts of this. Operations have been becoming more decentralized over the past year. We recognize the need to begin decentralizing operations. The foundation was created, and a lot of employees from Hedera, primarily in BD, business development, went to the foundation, and what was left behind are what you kind of would expect. So engineering, marketing, product, back office functions, legal, finance, etc. And we decided that it's time to go ahead and take the next step in decentralizing operations, meaning that most of those parts of the business, or organization, I should say, are moving from being inside of Hedera to being in Swirlds Labs. And that process is not yet complete. It's in progress. you'll hear about it I know that we're going to have comms around that whenever we finally do pull the trigger. Hopefully it's pretty close. But that's what's going on. And what will be left behind is the council itself. The network is, run by the council members. Brett is leading the organization. There will be finance function, some legal function left behind, but the development of the platform will increasingly be decentralized and diversified over time. The work that's being done today will continue to be done, obviously, in Swirlds Labs, but it won't stop there. There is a desire to make the ecosystem at large contribute on an increasing basis into the code base and participate in the creation of the Hedera improvement proposals and all of those things that are part of decentralizing the network in general. And all of that is moving down the right path. So that's what we're doing and sort of why we're doing it. And Brett, now maybe you can shed some light or add some color to how all of this is going to work.
Sure. So I'm going to have to lay some foundation for my answer, introducing a little bit of a taxonomy that I rely on pretty heavily in the council and with the council members. And no doubt we'll be coming back to this over and over again in future communications on how we do what it is we do. So the first is to separate governance from management and to also describe what governance really means and how we approach it. So governance breaks down into corporate governance. Corporate governance is the domain of the board of directors at Hedera, the Hedera Council. So they provide oversight of management, and they manage, the budget and other standard corporate governance affairs. Then you have network governance. This is what the council as a whole is directly responsible for. So operational governance, running the nodes on the network, everything around the rules of running a node. Cryptographic governance, which is using their private keys to sign transactions, the on-ledger component of governance that each council member uses to make those key decisions on the network. And deliberative governance, which is the normal, get people together, help them make informed decisions. So meetings, discussion, and the like. And then there's actually industry governance, which I think we'll come back to more in the future. Industry standards and public policy. How are governments regulating this industry? And how does the industry set standards for itself? So that's another theme we'll keep coming back to. So what is happening here is that there really is no change in governance. So that's the point I wanted to make. The Hedera Council does governance, and nothing is changing in governance. What's changing is really management of the day-to-day, and moving the management functions around development and the developer community engagement to Swirlds and or their affiliates, but through an outsourcing arrament. And over time, that will be more diverse set of people contributing to the code base as we fully open source, and a diverse set of contributors into the engineering of the network. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to make, the point I wanted to make, and that Mance and Leemon, who are here to speak for themselves, but as founders of Swirlds and continuing to be founders of the original member, they continue to be on the council. They will continue to be in all the same governance decisions that they want to be in. And in particular, Leemon has made it very clear that he will continue to lean in and lead on technical roadmap and future of development. So we're expecting no change in Leemon's engagement, whereas I think Mance, when he sort of focusing on what he can do on top of the network after this outsourcing arrangement, might give a little more room to day-to-day management. The other people can pick up and run with that ball. So that's how I see it playing out. And when it comes to kind of dissolving the office of the CEO, very specifically, that is being replaced by, again, the board's still the board and they still have oversight of management, but there's something we put in place called the executive committee. And the executive committee is going to step in and make those decisions that may have boiled up to Mance in the past. And that executive committee is comprised of all of the officers. And the officers of the company are appointed by the board. So that's how it all kind of ties together. The council elects the board appoints the officers, and the group of officers at the time are known as the executive committee, and they can take delegated authority from the board or the council as need be.
All right. Thank you both, Brett. I think that explanation was very helpful. So much appreciated as we give more visibility into how the council works and will continue to work. Leemon, I would guess that recent geopolitical events have led to this question. Can Hedera or the governing council freeze an account?
No. The software on our network is designed so that you can do certain special things when signed by the council. Freezing an account is not one of them. So the council can sign transactions to update the code, to move things out of treasury, to set the transaction fee prices. There are things the council can do by signing a magic transaction using their power. They cannot freeze an account. They cannot freeze a smart contract. They cannot freeze a topic or other things. They can delete a file. That's the only thing. But even that requires the majority of the council to agree with it, and to not just one council member can do it, but they have to agree and sign it together. But they cannot delete an account. They cannot delete these things, a topic or a HTS token, or freeze them. This is by design. It was intended to be decentralized, where even the council, which is in charge of governing the network, would not be able to go in and do things, especially things like, stealing coins out of your account. All sorts of things like that is simply the software doesn't allow it. And the software is published. You can read it through it and see how it's not allowed. So there are certain things the council can do only if they all sign it, but those are very limited, and they are absolutely not able to do things like freeze an account. I'll also point out accounts can be anonymous, so they wouldn't even know which accounts to freeze, but they cannot do it. That's the way it was designed, on purpose.
All right. Thank you for clarifying, Leemon. One more for you here. I know there's been a lot of chatter. How will we be able to stake HBAR? It's on the roadmap for Q2. Why did it move? And can you share more details?
Yeah. So we've said that we would be doing staking in Q2, which would make you think that there'd be a HIP about it around about now. Yes. Last week, I published the HIP for HIP 406, and this is for staking. So this is the proposal of how to do staking, and it ends up being extremely easy for a user. It ends up not freezing your HBARs. There is no bonding and slashing for you. You just say, I want my account to be staked to a particular node, and if that node is running, you get rewarded. Oh, good, there's links in the chat. So HIP, yes, I think it's the same link twice, it looks like. Maybe you could also send the one to the discussion. But there's, yeah, the same link is twice in the chat. But HIP 406, you can read through it, and then at the other link that'll be coming out in just a moment, you can comment on it and discuss it. But the idea is that your coins aren't frozen. You just say, I want this to be sent over to be at stake to that node, and then you get rewarded for it. You get rewarded once a day. You get rewarded whenever your balance changes or whenever you change your staking, and you earn it once a day, and you give your weight to that node. That node has more weight in consensus, and you are rewarded for having helped secure the network in that way. Now you're rewarded from account 800. Account 800 has nothing in it. Where are the rewards going to come from? Well, they can come from transactions. So a fraction of each transaction will go into 800, but they can also come from you. Anyone who wants to could give a grant to account 800. You can donate some HBARs to account 800 and they'll be used for staking. So the staking rewards will come from 800. The amount that will be rewarded, the rate at which it rewards, the emission rate, will be decided by the council, but it depends on people granting to 800. So we will see how that works out. There'll be more details, I'm sure, coming on that. If you're inclined to help get this started and send some to 800, you can do that. But also it will be funded from TPS. And as TPS goes up over time, more and more funds will come from that. But I'm extremely excited. We've been looking forward to staking for a very long time. And now we have the HIP. and we are on track to implement staking.
All right, thank you, Leemon. Mance, next question is for you. This community is like a hash graph. They never forget anything. The question is, TPS on the network is less than in the past. And Mance, you talked about step function last year. Is it delayed? And if so, why? And when will we see it on the network?
Sure. Well, so what I can say is that I am aware of enterprise applications that are being built. What I can't say is when those applications will go to market or whether they will go to market. So if they go to market, then the step function that I mentioned, I think will happen. If they don't go to market, well, then it will be delayed, because what I would anticipate is that the applications that do get developed for the platform will take advantage of the performance characteristics of the platform, and that means almost necessarily high throughput. And maybe this is another point that's worth just saying explicitly. You could break the world of applications or dApps down into two categories. Very simplistically, break them down into two categories. There are dApps that don't require high throughput, and for historical reasons, based on Gen 1 of DLT, going back to 2015 when Ethereum was first launched, et cetera, you didn't have there was no possibility of having really high throughput dApps, and developers lived within the constraints that they were given. And there are lots and lots of dApps out there today that sort of behave that way. And when they use our network, they don't require much TPS. So they don't drive high TPS usage. When there is a dApp that uses high TPS, then you see it, and you can see it on our network today. It should not be a surprise to anyone that the high TPS dApps represent a really high percentage of the total TPS that's being used. That's just sort of self-evident that that will be the case. When and if the enterprise apps, dApps that are being created go to market, they will represent a very large fraction of the TPS that's being used on the network. This is what I would anticipate. This is me speculating that if they go to market, or when they go to market, they'll represent a high percentage of the total TPS being used. And they'll serve as an example of what can be done, and will be followed by others that deliver their dApps and also go to market. And then you'll see the TPS usage diversify over time. So when you look at the traffic today, you shouldn't be surprised that there are a handful of dApps that represent a high percentage of TPS, and it's for exactly the reasons I just stated. And it will get worse before it gets better. At least that's what I would anticipate. When the first really high volume dApp gets deployed, it's going to represent a really large fraction of the total TPS usage, and then that will decrease over time as others come online. But so to just restate probably the most important point, I can't predict when those enterprise applications are going to get launched, or even guarantee that they will get launched. All I can say is that I'm aware of enterprise applications that are being built. I don't have transparency into those organizations. I'm not a part of those organizations, but I am hopeful, and we'll see how this unfolds over the coming weeks and months and quarters.
Thanks, Mance. And I would just add, we are always happy to support and promote and market applications as they develop on the network. It's very easy. Reach out to me, pr@hedera.com. Similarly with the foundation, those folks are eager to engage. But that's the beauty of Hedera. You don't actually have to do that. So sometimes people ask, well, why didn't you know about this application? And that's great because they were building it and they chose to share that publicly. And we're so happy that they did. And they don't need to come to us. So both of those things we think are wonderful. We're happy to provide support where folks ask us to, and we're also delighted to see those applications come live when they haven't even talked to us. Okay, Leemon, what is the adoption of smart contracts looking like?
This is even better than I was expecting. The community is really enthusiastic about these. So we've had smart contracts from the beginning, but now we have much faster smart contracts, and they have the ability now to call into our other things. They can use our fungible tokens. They can use our non-fungible tokens, our NFTs. They can make calls out to Hedera to do things. And so they are faster and they are more powerful. We have seen enormous interest in this, maybe even more than I was expecting. I thought this was going to be big, but maybe even more than that. And there is all kinds of tooling that needs to be made, and we're making it, and other people are making it to make it easier to use. There are all sorts of features that I hear about. I'm constantly hearing about people that are building projects now on top of this new kind of way of doing things, where you could use our token service to do your tokens, and then use smart contracts for the little bit of complicated things. So they're just transferring the tokens, and a number of other things are super fast and cheap. And then you have a smart contract for those few things that are complicated. Lots of interest in this thing. And we even have a hackathon in 2 days, I think, the 31st, 2 days from now. We're going to be starting the hackathon. And often we have hackathons, every year we have hackathons where we are saying, build something cool on Hedera. This time there's a theme to it. Build something cool using the Hedera smart contracts, smart contracts 2.0. So this is the theme of our hackathon. It just starts in a couple of days. I would very much encourage everyone to get involved in it. We have a link, hedera.com/H22. I think that exclamation mark is part of the sentence and not part of the URL. And go to hedera.com/H22 and you can learn more about this. It is very exciting. Oh, and there's another link. If you're building an application, would like to get in touch regarding marketing and things. Yeah, there's even a link there for submitting your project. And of course, you can build things anonymously without us, or you can tell us and we can publicize whatever you want. Wow, good links today. So I'm very excited about the hackathon. I'm very excited about smart contracts themselves. And I just can't wait to see what you guys invent on top of it. Very excited about that.
We can't wait either, Leemon. Thank you. Brett, this next one is for you. Can you explain the process for the donation of HBARs to the Ukraine? How and why was that decision made?
Sure. I think I'll just go through what happened, chronologically. So March 9th was a regularly scheduled council meeting. And in that meeting, one council member started the conversation, but other council members jumped in and said, we've been seeing that other crypto projects are providing aid to Ukraine. Is this something, we can do? And, up to that point, the council had never used its treasury in that way. And so essentially said, okay, the board will take an action to go and look into our options. What can we do? How can we do it? We have a regular scheduled board meeting coming up on March 16th. And so that was the plan. So, okay, thank you for the input. The board serves at the will of the council. So it was going to go work on finding a way to help out. Then on March 11th, which was between the council meeting and the board meeting, we actually discovered that the Ministry of Digital Transformation from the government of Ukraine had reached out to us. And I think it's now widely known that they were reaching out directly to a number of leading crypto projects looking for support. And so in that we learned more about their dire need. So that just added fuel to the fire to help out sooner than later and find a way to do that. So we acknowledged, let them know that we were going to take this up in the board meeting. And we asked, is there a way that we could use HBAR? That was the most readily available asset that we had. And we also thought it'd be good if the government, had an HBAR wallet. I think it could lead to other good things for the government of Ukraine. So they confirmed, yes, yeah, we can do that. They can make that happen. So on the 16th, the board convened. We decided a deeply considered decision. So everything that I've seen, come up as questions from the community, they were considered and debated, and the board concluded, $1 million donation in HBAR for humanitarian purposes only, which the governor of Ukraine accepted, and actually later followed up and gave us details on how they spent that. And they spent those funds on medical supplies, even going so far as giving us a copy of the invoice for medical supplies that they bought with those funds. And then we coordinated, public disclosure of this, public disclosure of their wallet to try to perhaps inspire more donations from HBAR holders. And that's how it happened.
All right, thank you, Brett. And it was very nice to see what they have put those towards in terms of the first aid kits and the things that they are using that for. Leemon, what are your plans to ease the migration of dApps from Ethereum and other networks to the Hedera platform?
Yeah. So the first step is Solidity just works. If you have a smart contract on Ethereum written in Solidity, you just bring it over and it works. And you can do that. And it'll be ERC20s and ERC721s and any other smart contract. You just bring it over and it works. So migration's pretty easy. You just do it and it works. Then, of course, you could say, well, I want to do something better than that. I want to bring over my smart contract that uses tokens, but I want to have it access your underlying token service, HTS. So then you could take your contract that was designed to have tokens, say, as a table inside of itself, and instead mint the tokens on Hedera and use the tokens in Hedera, and then just use the smart contract running for complicated operations, not just for ordinary routine transfers. And so if you want to make some changes to it, you can take advantage of all the power that we are making available. So you don't have to. You can take a smart contract from Ethereum and just bring it right over and it runs. And that's been true since 2018, and we've done it since 2018. We've gone out in the wild and found smart contracts on Ethereum. We bring them over and they just run. They just work. But you can also very easily change it in small ways. You just do pre-compile calls, which are easy to do in your smart contract, and then you get all the power of Hedera, and things run at the cost and speed and security of the Hedera HTS, the Hedera token system service. So you have all of those options. And then, of course, you could say, are there libraries? Are there tools? And we are going all out in building tools and options. There are standards for how software can call other software and end up triggering transactions or signing transactions. We're working to support that. I know third parties are building tools and options. We're trying to integrate into third-party ecosystems that have been built around these Solidity smart contracts. All those different things. And it's not just us, it's the community as well, building all of these different on-ramps and tutorials and ways of making it easier. So as a first step, just move it over, it works. As a second step, though, there's this whole ecosystem being built to make it as easy as possible to migrate your contract and take advantage of the additional power on Hedera, both of those.
Awesome. Thank you, Leemon. Brett, you will see that the questions come fast and furious during these. So the next one is for you as well. If you can shed some light on why are council members why is it taking so long to reach 39 council members?
Sure. So again, there's probably a lot that I can say here, and I'm going to try to say it all. I think the reason we have these town halls is to bring more transparency. We don't know what we maybe haven't already told the long tail of Hedera stakeholders until they ask. So I love that we have this system, but give us questions, because then we know, oh yeah, we haven't been maybe clear about that. So I want to be clear about the state of council recruiting and the history. So when I first joined the project in January of 2019, when we had no council members, in effect, it was a both important and urgent project. And the initial council members, the first 5, they shared that urgency. But yes, let's grow the council. Not as fast as we can. I think it's true that in any given year, we could have filled the council. It's more about being selective. So yes, let's grow the council with the profile of stakeholders we want as fast as we can. So there was a lot of urgency around that. Kind of prove the model, make sure we hit critical mass, and so that the council can be fully functioning, right? A real focus on a functioning deliberative governance body. And then over time, as we probably, I would say around 21, 22 council members, somewhere in there, I started to notice, the sense among the council members was, yes, we'd love to have 39 council members, but this wasn't the talk of the town. This wasn't what they were talking about when we would convene and have meetings. This wasn't what they were asking about. And there was a little bit of shift from who's involved to more, what are they doing? And so it was a shift to, let's really emphasize use cases. And when we bring council members on, make sure they have a use case and help the council members who joined early, to find their use case, to find their use of the network. So I would say it's just a little bit less of a sense of urgency and really looking for those great companies that have use cases. And we continue to grow the council kind of organically. But that's one thing that I just wanted to share. The other thing is the council the council recruiting process has been led by the founding member. It's one of the bootstrapping authorizations that Swirlds has as the original member is appointing the first 39 council members. I do believe that is about to shift. I think that that's about to be handed to the membership committee. And as the members come together, I don't want to predict if it's going to go faster or slower because who knows? But what I will say is it will move at the pace that the current council members want it to. They will be more hands-on in the recruiting process, or hands-on on who they're nominating, who they're approving, who they're not approving. So that is a shift that we're making here as part of these other changes from sort of, governance phase 2 to governance phase 3, as we've talked about before. So I think that's the state of council recruiting. I should have mentioned the Hbar Foundation continues to be a partner in council recruiting, and we continue to collaborate with them, and they bring prospects to us, and that has been happening. And I think we're going to be working with a longer tail of outside third parties to bring prospects, the members themselves, the Hbar Foundation, but others in the state, other stakeholders as well. So if anyone's interested in helping us grow the council faster, I think, Zenobia, if you can kind of just remind people how they reach us with such messages, I'll be happy to start evaluating that and considering other folks that are in an ideal position to help bring more qualified council members to the table.
Yeah, I think, similarly, both the link that Lena had shared as well as the email I shared earlier, we're not that big an organization. We know where everyone is, so happy to funnel anything through the PR at Hedera alias as well. Leemon, we have some questions from the community around.
Before that, I just want to point out from a security point of view, from the technology point of view, I've often been asked why 39 members, and I've always answered it's basically an arbitrary number. But if we had just said from the beginning 26 members, it would have been fine. But if we'd said 5 members, it's really bad. And you should understand why that is. 5 would be bad, 26 is great, 39 is great. And the reason is, if a third of the network shuts down, then the whole network shuts down. So if you only had 5 members, 2 computers could crash and then suddenly the whole network shuts down, which would be a disaster. But with 26 members right now, we would have to have 9 different nodes crashing at the same time to shut down the network, or 9 being malicious at the same time to shut down the network. 9 different of these Fortune 500 companies and top 10 universities would have to be crashing or hacked at the same time. It just is very hard. So at 26 right now, a third of that is a little bit more than 8. So it takes 9 to do something bad. We have already reached the bar of being very secure in that way. Now, I like 39. It's still a nice number. And so we'll still continue to go up to 39. And then it'll take 13 to crash at once to freeze the network. Oh, that's much better. We're also going to go to community nodes, and then it will go even higher. And that's even more better. But I just want to point out from a security point of view, from a reliability point of view, 26 is great. So where we are right now is wonderful, but it's going to be even better.
Great. Thank you, Leemon. Before we segue into the question around community nodes, I do want to note, the nodes today are hosted all over the globe. They're hosted in different hosting facilities. I know I've seen some things around, hey, are they all hosted in one infrastructure provider? Absolutely not. So that is part of how we get to that today as well. But the next question on here is around the hardware requirements, Leemon, to run permissioned community nodes.
Yeah, same as a council node. So we have a document that says what are the requirements for node hosting. It's the node hosting policy. And it says it has to be a pretty powerful computer. So it needs to be dual processor of 12 cores each. And then they're hyper threaded, so you can count that as twice that. And it needs to be, the way Intel counts it, it'd be half of that because they count each one twice. It gets confusing. And 256 gigabytes of RAM, a 5 terabyte hard drive, SSD drive, NVMe, gigabit of connection to the internet, gigabit per second connection. That's not burst, that's sustained. What else? I think that's it. Oh, had to have a slot for a GPU in case you want to add one someday. We may someday do that. We wrote actually some software that is just amazingly powerful using the GPU to verify signatures. You can do millions a second, but we don't need it. We've been able to make this thing efficient and run fast without it. So at the moment, we're not even using GPUs, but we have said we want all our computers to have a GPU slot just in case we add it someday. So that's kind of what you would need. It's a powerful PC style computer, fairly powerful machine, but not a supercomputer, not anything outrageous. A gaming computer would typically have more power than it needs because it has this great GPU. And so that's what you need to run a community node. And we'll be talking more about that in the future too.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Brett, more questions on council. How do the 39 council members choose who as individuals represent their seats? Are there qualifications, and can council members send more than one representative?
It's really not an exciting answer. They decide who to send. So it is entirely up to them. And no, there are not requirements. There are essentially requirements in the LLC agreement. And there's a path to, the council can remove a quote unquote bad member. So if they're sending people that are totally not qualified to engage in the discussion, they're totally tuned out, or they're dilatory in some significant way, those council members can be removed by the remaining council members through a voting process. However, that's not happening. There's a reason we go and try to attract Fortune 500 with trusted brands, strong reputations. They're going to engage with an appropriate person. They're going to be professional, and that's what we've generally seen. But no, the council itself does not get to tell any given council member who they can send to meetings. And there is this notion of a primary. There is this notion of a primary representative and an alternate. So there's kind of a special relationship with the first two individuals that a council member identifies. But no, there's generally not a limit on how many representatives they can have in a meeting. Now, that changed when COVID-19 hit and we stopped meeting in person. So now it's quite open-ended on who they can send to meetings. When we go back to in-person meetings, which I presume will happen at some point, then we'll have space restrictions, and it's probably going to be limited to one or two, if there's a special request, maybe three. Sometimes some of our members would bring a translator or someone to help with translation as a third. But that's how it works so far.
Great. Thank you, Brett. Okay, Leemon, this next question is about fees. Let's say in 2024, Hedera generates Billion USD in fees. What happens to the fees? Do the nodes get enough to cover their costs and make a small profit? Does the governing council, is any paid to HBAR holders? Please explain.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens when you do a transaction on the network? You pay your fee. A little bit goes to the one node that helped you out there to submit it. But of the rest of that transaction fee, it gets split up. Today, it all goes into account 98. That's the treasury of Hedera itself. But now that we're going to be doing staking, we will be having some of it go into account 800, which is for staking rewards. Those are the HBARs used to reward people for staking. And some of it will go into 801, which is the node rewards. This is what rewards a node for being a node. And so as the TPS goes up and the transaction fees flowing in get bigger, the council will adjust the ratios so that it pays all three of those. And so all three of those end up happening. So people get rewarded for staking, people get rewarded for running nodes, and the council has a little bit to live on. And so that is the plan. And it has all been going to the council so far because we didn't have staking, and the council has been manually paying the nodes. But we will be doing this in the future where it's automatic, where nodes get paid automatically, where staking gets paid automatically, and the council gets paid a small fraction of that.
All right, exciting. Mance, we haven't forgotten about you. Will Swirlds be able to do different marketing than Hedera has been able to do, for example, around HBAR?
Well, look, just as a general statement, Swirlds is totally independent of Hedera. And so Swirlds can do anything it wants to do, right? There are no restrictions on Swirlds that are sort of been placed there by Hedera. What practically here is going to happen is that we'll get through this transition, and Swirlds will then, and is already engaged in putting together an updated website, and there'll be some communications from Swirlds to the market formally that gives some description of the kinds of activities that Swirlds intends to engage in the short term. And so there'll be a whole comms plan from Swirlds out to the market. Just stay tuned for that. But Swirlds is its own company, and it's unrelated to Hedera, except in that it was the founding member of Hedera and will continue to be a member of Hedera. I think that's the simple answer.
All right. Leemon, back to you. Post implementation of sharding, will the shards be based on specific geographical locations, or will the nodes in each shard be selected at random?
Oh, it has to be random. Has to be random. Can you imagine having a shard in a country that suddenly has a disaster that was unexpected, a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, whatever? It would be horrible to have all your shard in that country. Or suppose that country has a change of leadership and leadership just takes over the whole network and does something malicious. It would be horrible to have a shard in that country that's limited to that country. You would never want to do that. The whole idea of trust is going to be that it's spread around the world. And so right now we are spread around the world in every continent but Antarctica, maybe someday there. When we have sharding, each individual shard needs to be spread around the world in every continent and maybe Antarctica, maybe off planet someday. This is fundamentally important. The assignment of nodes to shards needs to be pseudo-random in a way that an attacker can't predict, because the attacker shouldn't be able to do a Sybil attack where they get all their computers into a single shard. That should be hard. And for a similar reason, we need to be having random scrambling between shards. Nodes need to be told to move between shards, and it all needs to be automated. You don't want to have any human involved. The council shouldn't be involved. It needs to all be automated. So this is fundamentally important. You would never want to do geographic shards. I guess it makes your ping times a little faster. You have a slightly faster consensus, but you have to have security. So any ledger that went to geographic shards, I would look askance at. I would say, I'm not sure I trust that. Now, what we will allow, though, is lots of totally independent ledgers to have really good ways of communicating with each other. I think this is the future, and state proofs are the center part of that. And so if you want to stand up your own little network, even your own little Hashgraph network, you can do it, and you can make it geographic. You even make it just be your friends, and you can do whatever you want. And then you can have communication going back and forth. But you're not going to trust such an external network to, say, mint HBARs. Right? You're not going to have that kind of trust. Between shards, you have a great increased amount of trust. And that's why it has to be distributed to maintain that trust.
All right. Thank you, Leemon. All right. Brett, another one for you. Ken Herzinger has been in attendance at some of the Hedera Council meetings. Can you highlight a little bit about who he is and what his role is? We noticed that he has some comments about the SEC in his bio.
Sure. So Ken is with Paul Hastings. They're a law firm. They're one of a handful of law firms that Hedera, the council members, turn to, ask questions of when questions come up around the legal and regulatory space. I don't think we're breaking news here to say that the legal and regulatory landscape for operating a public DLT is a little unclear. So we, council members, do want the best available information. And so questions come up and they want informed answers. So we bring in experts to talk to them. Those conversations, and Ken is a specialist in the area of securities in particular. But it's not just limited to Paul Hastings, and it's not just limited to Ken. So you may see other third-party experts show up from time to time in those minutes. And one thing I will say about the nature of those discussions, when you have questions for your legal counsel, those are privileged conversations. And those are protected conversations. So that's why you won't see us, unless it's something we're deliberately trying to publicly disclose, you won't see a lot of details of how those conversations go in the published minutes, because that would break privilege of those conversations.
All right. Leemon, we are about to come up onto April and Earth Week. Is there a correlation between TPS and energy use? Do we expect to see a significant increase in energy usage when we have a significant increase in TPS?
Oh yeah, there's a correlation, but it's a good correlation. The more TPS, the less energy per TPS, per transaction. It's really good. If you double the number of transactions, maybe use a little bit more energy, but that means you use basically half as much per transaction. So your energy per transaction gets better when you have more transactions. This is one of the reasons being so fast is great. Being able to run at the speeds we do means we'll be able to get our energy per transaction much lower in the future, even than it is now. And we've already been rated by various reports as being the best of all the ledgers, all the major ledgers in energy per transaction, even 10 times better than credit cards. So that's great. As our TPS goes up, it gets better. As you add more nodes, it takes more energy per transaction, but going from, the nodes that we're looking at will still be extremely low per transaction. And we have the commitment, no matter what our energy per transaction is, we're buying carbon offsets and we're to make it carbon neutral, and then buying more to make it carbon negative. So we'll have that as well. But no, we are very, very low energy per transaction, and it will get even better as we have more TPS.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Mance, the next question I think has some, some incorrect assumptions, but I will ask it as is, if you can hopefully answer and correct some of those too. The council members have a duty to each other and their companies. Their companies use our technology and enjoy the benefits of a low HBAR price to keep their OPEX low, but investors would benefit from a higher HBAR price. How do you resolve this tension?
Yeah, it just, the question just comes with a misunderstanding of how the costs per transaction are denominated. Other platforms will denominate their cost for their API calls in the native currency directly. We don't do that. We denominate the cost for API calls in dollars, and that doesn't change. And then the number of HBAR that's required to make an API call does float. It changes. The SDK or the software that developers use has built into it the ability to very quickly calculate the number of HBAR that's required for a given API call. And that conversion factor, Leemon, keep me honest here, I believe that gets updated on an hourly basis. Is that right?
Once an hour. That's right.
once an hour. Yeah.
Based on a bunch of exchanges, averaging them or taking their median. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just doesn't matter what happens to the price of HBAR, whether it goes up or down. Your COGS, cost of goods sold, if you want to think of it in those terms, remains fixed. And that's really important for the developers, right? They need to be able to predict what their costs are going to be, independent of how HBAR floats on the market. And that's how we resolve that.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that, Mance. I'm going to try to speed through the next set of questions. I know we're almost to the top of the hour. With both the Hbar Foundation and Hedera having a fund targeted towards expanding the network, what is the split in goals between the two institutions? I think you have seen over the last couple weeks some exciting initiatives come out of the Hbar Fund in terms of their green fund that they are putting together. And then also this week, their DeFi fund. Those are the kinds of initiatives that, Hedera did give the grant, and now the Hbar Foundation has gone out and looked at what the market needs, where those funds can be best applied. And as we continue on that path to decentralization, I suspect you will see some more of that. Hedera and the Governing Council continue to, of course, focus on the development of the network, engaging developers, educating developers, and as you'll start to see with Swirlds as well, there will be additional areas of focus in terms of the enterprise too. So I will just say stay tuned, but the goal is to have lots of people at lots of decentralized organizations all working on growing the network and the adoption of the network. Okay, Leemon, with the split, we also talked about the code being open sourced. Can you share details about the technical controls in place to ensure the network can't be forked?
Sure. So what we have are state proofs right now. A first version of it, we'll have a later version that's better, I think. But we have a first version right now. Mirror nodes know for sure that what we are sending them is absolutely correct. It's been digitally signed by the nodes of the network. And so you have this cryptographic security of knowing that a mirror node absolutely knows the truth. If you really want to know the truth, you can run your own mirror node, and you're talking to the right network, because a false network, a split of the network, a fork of the network wouldn't be able to give you those signatures. So you have cryptographic security in that. If you don't run your own node, you could talk to several mirror nodes, and because each of them is 100% guaranteed to know the truth, even one honest mirror node among the ones you talk to guarantee you get the absolute truth. It cannot split and hurt you in that way. There's also the fact that the better mirror node state proofs coming out this year will even let users, you can just do a query to the network and get this cryptographic proof that you're talking to the right network. No question about it. So splitting isn't even a possibility. And then there's also just the establishment. Our council is amazing. It has been around now for a while. We've built an amazing council. And so it just becomes hard for any split to get any traction, is really what we're dealing with here. And so it'd be hard for them to get traction, and it will be impossible for them to fool you into thinking they're the real network. So the concerns that we had in 2018, we are now beyond that. We are now at a point where we can open source. And so we are open sourcing.
All right, exciting stuff. Brett, how would Hedera comply with a government sanction?
So I'm going to read this answer. So we prepared this. We thought this was something that should just be published. So we're publishing an FAQ, and here's what's going to say. Hedera Hashgraph LLC is a U.S. incorporated company and will therefore comply with any sanctions promulgated by the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, with respect to anyone it does business with directly, example, new council members, direct HBAR purchasers, grant recipients, etc. With respect to the network itself, the council does not have the ability to freeze or delete accounts. However, individual node operators may filter transaction instructions sent to them by users based on IP address. The council has approved a policy whereby all council members will filter transaction instructions from a small set of comprehensively embargoed jurisdictions by OFAC, while any other filtering for compliance with local regulation or for ethical reasons is at the discretion of the node operator. It's important to note that nodes do not filter traffic from other nodes, So if any node accepts transaction instructions from a user and distributes the transaction for consensus processing, the transaction will be validated.
All right, thank you, Brett. And Lena has also posted a link to that in the chat. Leemon, as the network scales and usage increases, there will be a need to minimize the impact of a minority of dishonest users. Are you considering work to introduce an alert system in the Hedera network for users to be able to report suspicious accounts?
Cool idea. Good hip for this. This is the exact kind of thing that we can build on top of Hedera. This isn't really a Hedera thing. It can't send an email to account holders because it doesn't know the email addresses of account holders. But we could imagine building other systems that are alert systems. This is exactly the kind of thing the community should do. So I'd encourage you to submit a HIP to do that. That's a great idea. And just to clarify the last thing, filtering here is just talking about when you submit a transaction to the network, you have to pick one node to send it to, and it goes through that node to get to the network. If you're running a node, you could filter out and say, I'm not taking transactions from some countries. That's the filtering that can happen. But once it's in the network, all of the nodes will process it. It will reach consensus. It will happen. There is no filtering at that level. One node can't opt out of being part of the network in that sense. So there's no filtering there. It's only the filtering at the very beginning when you send it to a node. That node could say, I don't accept transactions from your country. That's what we were talking about with filtering. Just wanted to make that clear from a technical point of view.
Thanks, Leemon. And Brett, last but not least, inquiring minds wonder, will Hedera continue to host the town halls on a quarterly basis as some of the team transitions to Swirlds?
Yeah, so let me explain how these decisions will get made, right? Because I think that's really the answer I can give. So a lot of our core functions have a committee that has oversight for that function. Technology has a technical committee, treasury management has a coin economics committee, et cetera. The board of directors itself is taking responsibility of providing oversight of our marketing program going forward. And so they will be reviewing all aspects of how we are reaching our community, what we're transparent about, what we publish, what we don't publish, how we engage. And so things may change over time. There's no plan to change the town halls, but as we consider, how do we be more transparent? That is a question that's going to constantly be on the table. Maybe the town halls will evolve a bit. Maybe they'll be. I don't want to suppose how they might change, but they may evolve. I'll just put it that way. But the board of directors will have oversight of the program going forward, and no plans to change it. So I look forward to being back with everyone, hopefully with some members in tow next time around. I'll be doing some arm twisting to make that happen. Look forward to the next one.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all those who tuned in today. Stay safe out there. We appreciate all of your questions. We appreciate you joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.